France, 1789. 4 generations, the French monarchy stood as one of the most powerful institutions in Europe. The king ruled by divine right. The nobility lived in privilege. The clergy held influence over both faith and education. And beneath them all, millions of ordinary people carried the weight of the kingdom on their backs. France was not a poor nation. It was vast, fertile, and culturally dominant, but it was deeply unequal. Society was divided into 3 estates: the first estate, the clergy; the second estate, the nobility; and the third estate, everyone else: peasants, workers, merchants, lawyers, artisans. Nearly 98% of the population belonged to the third estate, yet they bore most of the taxes. The nobility paid little. The clergy paid almost none. Years of war had drained the treasury. France had financed the American Revolution, hoping to weaken Britain. Instead, it deepened its own financial crisis. By the late 1780s, the crown was drowning in debt. Then came bad harvests. Bread prices soared. In Paris, hunger was not an abstract problem. It was daily survival. Families spent most of their income on bread alone. When grain shortages struck, desperation spread quickly. At Versailles, however, the royal court glittered with ceremony and excess. King Louis XVI was not a cruel tyrant in the traditional sense. He was indecisive, cautious, often overwhelmed. His queen, Marie Antoinette, became a symbol of extravagance in the eyes of the public, whether fairly or not. Stories circulated that she dismissed the starving with indifference. Whether she truly said, "Let them eat cake," mattered less than the anger people felt. France stood on a fault line. In 1789, facing bankruptcy, Louis XVI summoned the Estates General, a national assembly that had not met in over 170 years. It was meant to solve the financial crisis. Instead, it opened the door to revolution. The Third Estate arrived expecting reform. They demanded fair representation and voting by head rather than by estate. Under the traditional system, each estate had 1 vote. This allowed clergy and nobility to outvote the Third Estate, despite their small numbers. When their demands were ignored, the representatives of the Third Estate made a radical decision. They declared themselves the National Assembly. They claimed they alone represented the French people. Locked out of their meeting hall, they gathered in an indoor tennis court and swore an oath. This was the tennis court oath. They vowed not to disband until France had a constitution. This was not merely protest. It was defiance. Power was shifting. In Paris, tension boiled. Rumors spread that royal troops were moving to dissolve the assembly by force. Fear turned to action. On July 14, 1789, a crowd marched toward the Bastille. The Bastille was not merely a prison. It was a symbol of royal authority. Thick stone walls, heavy gates, a fortress in the heart of the city. The crowd demanded gunpowder and weapons. Negotiations broke down. Shots were fired. The battle was chaotic and brutal. After hours of fighting, the fortress fell. The governor was seized and killed. His head was placed on a pike and paraded through the streets. The fall of the Bastille sent shockwaves across France. The king had lost control of his capital. In the countryside, peasants rose against feudal lords. Manor houses were attacked. Records of debts and obligations were burned. The old order trembled. The National Assembly moved quickly. Feudal privileges were abolished. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen was issued, proclaiming liberty, equality, and the sovereignty of the people. The revolution was no longer a riot. It was ideological. But revolution is rarely stable. By 1791, the monarchy still existed, though weakened. Louis XVI reluctantly accepted constitutional limits on his power. Yet trust had evaporated. Then came a fatal mistake. In June 1791, the king attempted to flee France. Disguised and traveling at night, he sought refuge near the Austrian border. But he was recognized and arrested in the town of Varennes. The image of a king trying to escape his own people shattered whatever remained of royal credibility. France radicalized. War followed. Revolutionary France declared war on Austria and Prussia. Foreign monarchies feared the spread of revolution. Inside France, suspicion intensified. Anyone perceived as sympathetic to the monarchy became a potential enemy. By 1792, the monarchy was suspended. Louis XVI was put on trial. The charges were treason. The decision would define the revolution. In January 1793, Louis Capet, no longer referred to as king, was found guilty. On January 21, 1793, he was led to the guillotine in Paris. The blade fell. The execution was swift. The crowd watched in silence before erupting into cries of "Long live the Republic." Europe was stunned. A king had been executed not by rival royalty, but by his own people. Marie Antoinette would follow months later. But the revolution did not calm. It intensified. The Republic faced war on multiple fronts. Internal rebellions broke out. Fear of counter-revolution spread paranoia through the government. A new phase began, the Reign of Terror. At its center stood Maximilien Robespierre. Robespierre believed virtue must be defended by terror. To preserve the revolution, enemies must be eliminated. Revolutionary tribunals were established. Accusations multiplied. Executions accelerated. The guillotine became a constant presence in Paris. Public squares saw daily deaths. Nobles, priests, former revolutionaries, even ordinary citizens fell under suspicion. Danton, once a powerful revolutionary leader, was executed. So was Camille Desmoulins. The revolution began consuming its own architects. Between 1793 and 1794, thousands were executed, tens of thousands more imprisoned. The atmosphere was suffocating. Fear dominated politics. A careless word could be fatal. Robespierre's authority grew, but so did fear of him. In July 1794, members of the convention turned against him. Robespierre was arrested. The following day, he too was led to the guillotine. The blade fell once more. The terror ended. But stability did not immediately return. France had executed its king, dismantled its aristocracy, redefined citizenship, and plunged into war. The revolution had begun with ideals of liberty and equality. It had passed through chaos and bloodshed. Out of the turmoil emerged a new figure, Napoleon Bonaparte, a young general who would rise to seize power, eventually crowning himself emperor of the French. The monarchy had fallen, only for empire to rise again under a different name. Yet the world was no longer the same. The French Revolution shattered the belief that monarchy was untouchable. It spread ideas of citizenship, rights, and nationalism across Europe. It inspired future revolutions. It terrified established powers. It proved that a people, united and enraged, could bring down a king. When the Bastille fell, it was more than stone collapsing. It was the beginning of a transformation that would echo for centuries. The French Revolution was not a single event. It was a storm that reshaped politics, society, and the very language of power. Kings had ruled by divine right. After 1789, rulers would have to reckon with something far more volatile, the will of the people. And once awakened, that force could not easily be contained.